Hey, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the final episode of Audio Topsy Season 6. We got a goodie for you here. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for everyone who's been along for the ride all season. And we here at Audio Topsy, we like to do presuppositional analysis on song lyrics because we understand that music can build up. It can also tear down. It can excite, it can depress, it can also provide a really good opportunity to talk about the gospel. And that's what we're hoping to do. So thanks for joining us.
Music can manipulate your emotions, your spiritual state, your physical state, right? Music is a powerful force. No doubt about it. Can definitely be used for good, for worship, and worshiping God, or it can be used for worshiping other little g gods. So probably by now everybody knows what we're doing, and let's just talk real quick. We heard the opening riffs there in the opening music. Let's talk about the name of this band, Black Sabbath. The name even sounds very nefarious. I don't know what's going on. I missed it. I was looking away. Just dark, right? Obviously, the Sabbath is our day of rest, okay? That God set aside for us. And to say, to call something Black Sabbath, the band was named after a movie of the same title, okay, is pretty satanic, pretty dark. What do you guys think?
Well, I definitely think they were probably going in that direction, knowing it would sell albums, which I think is going to come up into the discussion today, because there's sort of a little bit of an irony going on, I think, where you create an image that is clearly going to be taken as occultic, but then you're somewhat on your high horse when people interpret it that way. I think it's kind of interesting.
It is. It's kind of like they bit off more than they could chew.
But you know what? A lot of that has to do with the actual business and the labels themselves of pushing that. They know that sells. There's so many things. Not just, to me, as a kid growing up, and when I would see Black Sabbath, I was afraid to even look at their albums. Man, it scared me. Man, I was like, Black Sabbath, like you're like, this is terrible. But then you'll see the background on some of these bands, even bands as recent in the last 10, 15 years, like Slipknot. You'll read articles where they'll talk about showing up for concerts and the stage is set up with all this stuff, and they're like, we have nothing to do with this, and they laugh at the symbology of it. And you're like, so who's really telling the truth here? I don't know, man. It's interesting, especially Black Sabbath. This goes back. This is definitely the originators of this sound.
Yeah.
Well, on their very first album, self-titled, I believe, right?
Yeah.
They had an image when you open up the gatefold of an inverted cross.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think that they were communicating at least in one way or another whose team they were on.
Yeah.
Now, I've read, and we'll talk about this later, I've read the biography of Ozzy, okay? And it was a very interesting book, very humorous, very kind of eye-opening, in many ways. But this is the beginning. These are blue-collar workers, okay, from, where are they from? Well, I know they're from England, but I'm trying to remember the town they were from. You guys remember?
Not offhand. Wasn't it like a mining town?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just a town. I don't know. I just imagine England is it raining all the time, right? Sorry for our UK friends, but that's the picture that I get, and how many times we've heard that quote from Ozzy saying, they were listening, to the music from America. If you're going to San Francisco, put a flower in your hair, and they're like, what the heck is this? This is not our life. Our life is dark. So their music reflected that in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Birmingham, Tom.
Birmingham, yes, Birmingham.
Not
Not
Alabama.
Alabama.
Yeah, not
Arrested
Alabama.
a couple times, juvenile delinquent.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have much hope of amounting to much, except for maybe working in the same factories that his father did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's interesting some of the symbology. Tom, you mentioned the upside down cross. Some of the early albums, they didn't go with it, like it wasn't their permanent logo, but occasionally you'll see the S in Sabbath looking a lot like the Lucifer Thunderbolt, like AC/DC and Kiss
Mm-hmm.
use. They also, I believe, had an album called Born Again that had a red devil baby on the front with fangs and horns. And so again, they really weren't doing anything to avoid the label of a cult.
Vic, I remember when that album came out and it was in stores, and I would just look at that thing like, whoa, these guys are so evil. Like, these guys are ultra evil. Who does that? A devil baby? And then you say born again, using the Christian terminology,
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see in the comments what you guys think of Black Sabbath, what you think of the imagery, the lyrics, all of these things, especially the song that we are going to talk about tonight. Okay. The first time that I ever heard this song was when a Christian band, Deliverance, covered it. And I saw that it was written by Tony Iommi, and I'm like, what? I was so confused at the time because I grew up seeing Born Again, the evil devil cover, right?
Yeah.
And just all of this other stuff, the Black Sabbath and Mob Rules, and hearing the songs Children of the Grave and all of this stuff, right? So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into this song. We got a lot to cover. Let's jump into these song, and we're going to look at the lyrics. And this is a song by Black Sabbath. Pay close attention to the lyrics. Here we go.
Have you ever thought about your soul? Can it be saved? Or perhaps you think that when you are dead, you stay in your grave. Is God just a thought within your head, or is it part of you? Is Christ just a name that you read in the book when you were in school?
So there we go. Right out of the gate, some pretty blatant lyrics. The song is called After Forever, off of the album Master of Reality. Maybe it was the second or third Black Sabbath album. Maybe the third. So
Yeah. I'm gonna have to admit to something here, Tom. As a guitar player and all these things, and my whole life's been around it, I was not that influenced by Black Sabbath. I didn't get it, and I kind of stayed away from it when I was a kid because it was like there was something about it, and I was like, I'm not gonna mess with this. And I went to other stuff. Now I liked some of the Ozzy stuff later on and stuff, but it wasn't until I got older that I actually went back and listened to some of this stuff. And I think a lot of it may have had to been just do with musical style. I always, for me personally, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. I thought they were very simplistic, and it didn't really touch onto what I liked as a musician. Now, I go back when I listen to this song today. This was the first time I actually ever listened to the entire version of this song. I've heard many covers of it. Stryper has a cover of it, different stuff. And to me, I'm just going to be honest. It's a mediocre song in terms of musical stuff. It's nothing spectacular.
well,
but lyrically, when you go through the whole thing, I was really shocked by it. I could only imagine when this was brought to Ozzy, and was like, "Hey, Ozzy, I want you to sing this song." What it was like, Sharon. Like what the heck? What am I singing here? Because the lyrics are overtly Christian. There's no in or after buts. That's what it is. So. I don't know.
Well, okay, Vic, what do you think?
Well, I got lots to say about this. First of all, Kenny, you'll be intrigued by this. My brother started playing guitar at 15, and so he wanted to teach his little sister how to play something. So he picked the easiest thing he could think of. So the first thing I ever played on guitar was Iron Man.
Of course.
Which is crazy because as a 13-year-old girl with tiny little fingers, bar chords are really not that easy. So I don't know why he picked that song, but I don't know. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. So culturally, Tom, as you so eloquently said at the beginning of the show, they're not Americans. They were not connecting with the music of the 60s and how happy-go-lucky and wonderful everything was. They were living in England, and at the time, there was all sorts of civil war erupting in the UK, in Ireland. There was massive conflict between the Catholics and the Protestants. They were murdering each other. They were setting off pipe bombs, and the NRA was active. And so their view of Christianity wasn't so much Jesus died on the cross and I died to the old man and living anew. It was more, why are the Catholics and the Christians murdering each other in the name of Jesus? This is terrible. And Iomi was raised Catholic. And so he was, I think, maybe perhaps writing from more of a political standpoint than a spiritual standpoint, a religious standpoint maybe, but I don't know if we were to sit down and talk to him about,
So I got a question. Did Iomi write this or did Geezer Butler write this song?
They both might be credited.
Yeah, I wondered about that because I believe that Geezer's the only one that's actually come out and said he was a Christian, I think.
Okay.
So, and I don't have my glasses on. It says a lot of it is because of the situation in Northern Ireland at the time. There was a lot of religious troubles between the Protestants against the Catholics. I was brought up strictly Catholic, and I guess I was naive in thinking that religions shouldn't be fought over. So one of the things about this song is I think he's trying to hold these people, religious groups, if you will, accountable to their own beliefs.
Yeah, I see that.
Okay, you're saying this and you're saying this, but there's a war going on. And he's asking these questions. Is Christ, just a thought within your head, or is he a part of you? Is he real, or what's going on? You're claiming this, but you're not living this.
Yeah,
that's really good.
I don't want to jump ahead. I don't know this song by heart by any means. I don't know the lyrics and stuff, but what I always look for whenever I see a secular song that starts getting religious, at the end of the whole thing, my sort of litmus test is, does it talk about Jesus being the one way? Does it talk about repentance, or does it just talk about some universal love? So that's what I'm going to be looking for as these lyrics unfold.
Yeah.
So, Kenny, let me ask you this, because I want to go back and talk about the music again before we go into the next part.
Sure.
I gave the album 13 a one-time listen through. Okay, this was their newest album, produced by Rick Rubin, probably about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I heard the same types of simplistic types of riffs on that album, but at the same time, as simple as they are, they're very catchy.
Oh yeah.
I
think I said, I was listening to this song today going, I had to run some errands and I put the song on, I was listening to Sabbath's version. The other versions are a little more, a little stuff onto it, but I get what goes onto it, because we were in a time in the early 70s, music and stuff like that, like you literally could sit down and be like, hey, I just wrote a new riff, and then they've got a song, and they weren't really trying to flesh it out and be like master composers and all this stuff. It was like they were creating an ambience, and that was like, and also too, this music was very obtainable to people, and especially for musicians and teenagers and stuff, they could play these songs. It didn't take a lot of work. It was, hey, I'm playing the new Black Sabbath song, and I think there's a big factor into that too, of what's going on with that. But yeah, and like I said, that's just a personal thing for me. They've got some great songs and great riffs. You can't beat it. I mean, like I said, Iron Man is just like, it is simple, but man, that lick has been around for 50 years, and I got kids that come in right off the bat, and they're like 8 years old. I want to play Iron Man. Dun, and a lot of them now have learned it. Where do you think they've got it from now? From seeing the Marvel, seeing Iron Man. So that to them to hear that, or so it's interesting how the cycles of music. But yeah, I kind of dig the simplicity now because I'm not quite as uppity as I was when I was a young musician.
You're not as much as a snob as you used to be.
That's right. That's exactly. You know what? Thank you, Jesus. I'm not a music snob anymore.
Hey, Kenny, I couldn't unhear when I was listening to it in prep for the show. I can't unhear this now. The opening little melody, it sounds so much like the Rembrandts ripped that off and turned it into the Friends theme song.
No, I heard it. Yes, that's it. The Friends theme.
We need a mashup.
Guys, that's great.
We need a mashup.
I didn't catch that. Very good. I hear it now, though. Let's go back into it. This is the next clip from After Forever by Black Sabbath. Want to know what you guys think. Go ahead.
When you think about death, do you lose your breath or do you keep your cool? Would you like to see the Pope on the end of a road? Do you think he's a fool? Well, I see the truth, yes, I see the light, and I've changed my ways. And I'll be prepared when you're lonely and scared at the end of my days.
So, again, listening to the music, there are a lot of shifts that happen in there, and I don't know how to explain them. It's almost like there are these bridges, these pre-choruses, musically speaking, and there are three main, very rememberable, like types of musical parts in there, right? There's the one that's just kind of driving, right?
Sure.
And then you hear that part, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then there's even another one there.
Well, you know what? And I will say that I will say this also too. What's interesting, because I'm listening to it now, and I realize that like a lot of the riffs, the rhythmic simplicity, the chord, the power chord, da 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 da, and then Ozzy is completely following that rhythm with his lyrics. Put on a rope. He's saying he's basically following the same thing. It's just like it's a very simplistic thing for it, but it gets it across. Really.
Well, and the same thing, that's what Iron Man is known for.
Yeah.
Because he follows the music with his lyrics in Iron Man, and probably that's how he learned.
Yeah.
Like they didn't know how to do it, so he's like, okay, is this how you write a song?
Yeah.
As he lost his mind.
Here, yeah, I got it. That's what you realize that's them writing songs early on. There's stuff more complex as time goes on. They've got some very complex songs, and especially Ozzy goes on to stuff. You think about things, but yeah, when you hear this, but I get it. To me, it's like the time period. It was like, these were the predecessors of heavy metal, man. They were kind of bringing that stuff into it. So this was new territory.
Right.
Interestingly, with the songwriting, I actually have a little bit of detail on that. So Jakey Lee, who has every reason to despise Ozzy and Sharon, has actually spoken kindly about Ozzy's ability to come up with song concepts and melodies. Mm-hmm. So, and I've actually heard online some like demo tapes of Ozzy's early songwriting, like before he has all the lyrics. So I think one of them was like Bark at the Moon. And so Jake had said he knew he wanted the chorus to be Bark at the Moon, and he knew the melody, but he had no idea what any of the lyrics would be. And it's Ozzy just like, diddling, like, but he's got the whole melody, like the whole melody is almost exactly like it winds up on the tape. Mm-hmm. So it is interesting how, at least in Black Sabbath, I wouldn't say that Randy Rhoads or Jakey Lee necessarily did this, but the guitar very much just matched that melody. But I think that's where Randy and Jake, took it to a different level. They didn't just mimic it.
So what about the lyrics that we just heard? Some of them are, would you like to see the Pope on the end of a rope? Do you think he's a fool? That's, he's asking, what do you think about this religious system of Catholicism? Mm-hmm. And when you think about death, are you afraid to die is what he's asking. Would you, then the line about the Pope and says, well, I've seen the truth, and yes, I've seen the light, and I've changed my ways. I'll be prepared when you're lonely and scared at the end of our days. To me, that sounds like somebody who is, sharing that they have confidence that they're saved.
Yeah.
That when, because he's referencing death at the beginning. He's basically saying, are you afraid of death? I'm not afraid of death because I've changed. I've seen the truth and I've seen the light. Okay. For us Christians, we, know what the truth and the light is. Okay. And I've changed my ways and I'll be prepared when I'm lonely and scared at the end of our days. What do you guys think?
That's the line that popped out at me as well, Tom, because I was thinking I would love to know what his preparation is. Because if he was raised Catholic, his confidence is probably in the fact that he was baptized into the Catholic Church, because they're told.
Yeah, but Vic, he says, I've changed my ways. Which, no, I'm not. Yeah, I agree with you, but I've thought about all those things.
I know. I guess where I'm coming from, Tom, is if we've got the whole band in front of us and their lyrics and their lifestyles and everything, we've got one song in 50 years that has some religious lyrics. Is that enough to plead the case that this guy is
Black Sabbath is a Christian band?
I know, man.
Yeah.
Let me say this. My first pick was War Pigs. And I really wanted to do that. That song is so long.
Yeah, it is.
And I thought for today, this is a better pick because it's just kind of blatant. And I think it's going to be fun to talk about that one. I love that song, War Pigs. I mean, I feel like it's straight out of the Bible. I cannot disagree with those lyrics.
Yeah.
Probably
we
don't have time to get into it today. But go ahead.
Yeah, War Pigs is probably the best song they ever written. It just, and I will tell you, I teach a lot of kids drums, and young kids lose their mind over this song because it's got all these great jazz riffs. The beginning's like that triplet shuffle. It's very jazzy. It's incredible. It's got all these fills, and then you've got that open space. And it's just sitting there, you're waiting for it.
Yeah.
Da-da. And then Ozzy comes in with that lyric, and you're like, oh my gosh. I mean, it really is an incredible song. And I think a lot of people, when I was younger, I thought there was occultic stuff to it, but it's really anti-war. It's an anti-war song, which is really interesting as you get older and realize that. So,
it's a very political song. And go ahead, Vic.
I don't want to go off on a tangent. I'm just going to tell listeners, if you're interested in the conversation of a heavy metal secular band that has an occasional Christian sounding lyric, I think we kind of covered that at length when we did Creeping Death, which was one of the first seasons. And we talked about this. And what I'm noticing, guys, is there's this trend where now in our era, we have bands that are not Christian bands, but they have Christian members, or members that identify as Christians. And then we've even got Stryper recently has said, we're not a Christian band. We're a band and we're Christians. And so there's all of a sudden now this differentiation between a Christian band and a band that's comprised of Christians. And now we have bands that were always secular where members are becoming Christians, like in Iron Maiden, Wasp, Korn, etc.
Right.
There's a lot of different subcategories now with that.
Right. Let's jump into it. Keep moving along here and listen to this next part. So let us know what you guys think in the comments.
Could it be you're afraid of what your friends might say? Then you believe in God above. They should realize before they criticize that God is the only way to love.
Could it be that you're afraid of what your friends might say if they knew that you believed in God? They should realize before they criticize that God is the only way to love. Well, I don't know. If that's a capital G, you can't get much more Christian than that. And
Now
that falls in with Catholic theology and Protestant, theology. So the lyric, that line is a very good line, and it's challenging somebody. Hey, don't be ashamed of your faith, and don't
Yeah.
try to hide it. So I don't know.
I can tell you a personal quick story with me years ago when I started to really, my walk started to get a little stronger, and I was really realizing that Christ was where I needed to go and be on point with. And I remember a fellow musician was like, "Hey man, yeah, dude, that's cool. I see what you're doing, man. A lot of washed up musicians become Christians." I was like, "Wow." I was like, I mean, it was like punch. I went, "That's a terrible statement." I was like, "I'm sorry. I'll put my skills up against anybody."
Yeah, right.
So, and they got to do it. I just like every time I think about that when somebody said that to me, and I was like, "Washed up? What in the world? What is that?" It's like, oh, you have nowhere else to go, so now you're going to become a Christian musician. I was like, no, that's not it. That's not why I'm doing it. That's just
because that's where all the money is, right?
Yeah. I want to go. Yeah, let's do this for that. No, exactly.
I would agree with the statement in this course, but I would just add that the definition of love would have to also be biblical. And it says in 1 John, if anyone says that he loves me but does not do what I command, he is a liar and the truth is not in him. And so the Bible has very strict boundaries and definitions of how love is defined. It's not one of these, love is never having to say you're sorry, and love means everything that feels good, do it. And you know what I mean? So I agree with the statement, but I'm also, the caveat is that I would agree with the biblical definition of love.
Yes, agree,
Yeah.
Vic. Agree. Let's move right along. Let's check it out.
It's your mind so small that you have to fall in with the fight wherever they run. But it should stay when death is near and say that you may as well worship the sun.
I remember listening to Deliverance sing this song, and we didn't know that it was by Black Sabbath. We loved it. We were like, oh, dude, this is one of their best songs. We didn't know that it was a Black Sabbath song. We thought it was a Christian song from the band Deliverance.
Yeah.
And then somebody told me, and I looked, and I was like, what? I was just like, I got punked, before that was a thing. But again, I already mentioned I was confused. I was like, how is this possible? Everything I know about the band Black Sabbath is just evil, and Ozzy is evil, and these guys are devil worshipers. Yeah. And where did this come from? So is your mind so small that you have to fall in with the pack wherever they run? This was kind of our thing back in the day. We were challenging other Christians to be bold, or to not compromise their faith and go along with the crowd. Kenny?
Hey, I wonder, honestly, how much the record label knew what material was going on to this, because of all their stuff's very occultic and a very satanic type stuff. And all of a sudden, there's this blatantly Christian song. Did they even know that's what the song was about? Or pay attention? Because I'm telling you, there's a lot of record labels who've released stuff who then all of a sudden go, we did not know what this was, as an opposite. Like, this is being very Christian and a very occultic thing. I mean, there's other stories where people were like, I remember when Disney had released, what's the band? Insane Clown Posse around 1995. They released the Great Malenko album. I was working at a record store in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. The album came out. It was selling. And within 4 hours, we got a thing that said, pull all of them. So I grabbed one to keep on hand. Disney didn't realize what they had signed and released. And all of a sudden it came back and they were like, what did we just do? And so I have a copy of the original one, and then they cut it up and re-released it as something else. But I do think sometimes that I wonder if this song slid through, because it's not a very well-known Black Sabbath song. I don't know a lot of people who would even as Black Sabbath fans even bring this song up. I don't hear much about it. I mean, except for like Striper and Deliverance and these bands have done it. But could this song have slid through as like a seed planting from Geezer Butler? Like, let's see if this gets through. Here, Ozzy, sing this song.
Yeah. Go ahead, Vic.
Oh, I was going to say, this song really reminds me a lot. It's kind of, to me, a precursor to Sunday Bloody Sunday for U2. You've got these people in this war-torn country, and the war, it's over religion.
Right.
And so in Sunday Bloody Sunday, the whole thing is about this IRA and the war going on. But the very final lyric is the real battle just begun, to claim the victory Jesus won. And so he's tying it up like what's going to be the final, decisive marker to the end of this war is Jesus is going to come back and he's going to fix it and he's going to bring peace on earth. So he's bringing in a biblical and a Christian concept, and at least half the members of U2 at that time professed openly to be born again believers, and so I know that was coming through. But I don't know, that both of them take on more of a political tone to me than a Christian. They might be religious, but I don't know necessarily biblical or spiritual in my thinking.
Yeah, agree. Agree, Vic.
But also too, the Black Sabbath lyrics are fairly simple. They're not overtly over the top. Like, you can't tell exactly what they're saying completely. It's just like, here's a simple line. Like you said, you have to kind of define it a little more as the biblical sense of love. You definitely can tell that there's a situation between the Protestants and the Catholics. There's a whole thing there. I mean, I guess you could really tear this down. The backstory is much more extensive than we think and what's going on with it there. But you're right. Jesus will come back and we'll it'll get settled, people. And at that point, good to go.
Yeah. The way that this song kind of fit in, the lyrics of this song fit into what was happening with me in the early 90s. It was less than 20 years later, if you think. That's kind of weird, because 1970, whenever this album came out, 71 or whatever, is a long way away now. It's like 50 years ago. It's hard to believe. When I first heard it, it was only like 20 years old when I heard this song. I didn't know Black Sabbath did it.
I neither.
But the way that Deliverance covered it, Deliverance is a Christian thrash metal band, and they updated the music and the crunch a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And the one part they did kind of as almost like a rap part, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Similar to the way Metallica did in some of their albums, like One, you know. You know the part I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's I was never looking at it from a political point of view. I was looking at it as a very bold Christian song. And I think, this happens. Obviously, we've talked before about Johnny Cash covering Hurt. Okay. And how powerful that song and video became when Johnny Cash brought a whole new meaning to it. Okay. And other songs have been done that way as well. So anyway, let's keep rolling here, and let's see what we have next. After Forever. Here we go.
I think it is true with people like you that crucified Christ. I think it is sad the opinion you had was the only one voice. Will you be so sure when your day is near, say you don't believe? You had the chance, but you turned it down, now you can't retrieve.
So coming back again with the lyric, I think it's true that it was people like you that crucified Christ.
Whew.
Again, that's a charge against maybe both Catholics and Protestants, saying, do you guys realize what you're doing here?
Yeah.
You're just like the ones that crucified Christ.
Yeah.
So I think it's sad the opinion you had was the only one voiced. Will you be so sure when your day is near? Say you don't believe, you had a chance but you turned it down, now you can't retrieve. So to me, that sounds like somebody rejecting Christ altogether. Okay, and they're trying to appeal to them. And even with the beginning part, say, I think it's people like you that crucified Christ, and you're rejecting him, and involved in the crucifixion, and now you're going to be sorry, okay, when it's all over, because when you stand before the judgment seat of Christ, there's no going back. That's the way I took that to believe, but I can see, it can be applied in a different way when you look at the geopolitical situation in Ireland and England in the early 70s. So, guys,
from a writing perspective, and I mean not even lyric or poetry writing, but just in writing in general, there's always like a thesis statement that you should start out with. So you don't want to sit and write, tons and tons of stuff if you don't even have a clear thesis statement. And it would seem to me that if I had to boil all of this down to like a thesis statement, is it ultimately pointing towards Christ, or is it pointing towards a bunch of hypocrites? Like, what motivated this? Is he motivated by, I love Jesus so much and I want you to as well? Or is he motivated by some sense of justice or vitriol or bitterness that there's so many hypocrites in the world smearing the name? It seems like he's giving more of a spotlight to the hypocrites of the world than he is specifically Jesus.
I wonder what it was like to be in a Birmingham bar and hear this song played.
Oh, yeah.
Like from the riffs to the lyrics, because it's really unlike anything that has ever been done before. Even in simplicity, they were breaking ground. There's the age-old argument, who created heavy metal, Led Zeppelin or Black Sabbath? And they both, had their contributions. But I just wonder what it was like, to see these guys. I think, and I've not read any biographies. I read the Ozzy biography, and this might play a little bit into my thoughts here, but I think these guys probably started out, late teens, early 20s, still have that lingering effects of the way they were brought up, and they were able to plug that into their music. From what I understand, later on, they got into the occult, and it almost like their name became a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I don't know. I am just speculating on some of this stuff. I've heard stories, and you see the direction that they went, okay, in a lot of things. I'm not defending them, in any way, and just saying, hey, listen to Black Sabbath, listen to this song. Again, I think it's interesting how you can take this song and you can bring a different meaning to it, so I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think about just the idea that maybe they started off with those roots were more influential?
Yeah, I think like you were just talking about the who created heavy metal, man. It kind of, that whole thing with Zeppelin, Sabbath. I will say this: I wasn't a huge Sabbath fan, but going back and listening to it, I think they were breaking more new territory.
Keep this up, Katie.
Because Zeppelin was so blues based. Their stuff was still very blues based and had that kind of See, these sounds don't sound very as blues based. They're using pentatonic scales, but they're like going da 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 da. It's just way more. It was not so completely blues based. They really were kind of breaking ground with a sound, and I really believe they kind of set that in motion. Even Zeppelin changed their sound a little bit after some of this stuff too. It started kind of moving a little bit toward that, but yeah, at musically wise, anyways.
So okay. I'm assuming maybe this is Tony Iommi here. This is a good little interview that is it Geezer Butler? Okay. So that Katie found. So it says, after your teen years, this is the question: how often did you go back to church? Are you still connected to it at all? No, not at all. At first we took Holy Communion and that was about it. I like kids having a belief up to a certain age, then let them go their own way and make up their own mind. I think it was good for me to have been brought up believing in with something, and I did get into it and believe it up to a certain point. My parents both went to church growing up, and my father particularly viewed it as a social thing. That's what it really is. As soon as you start meeting girls elsewhere, you sort of go off. That's interesting, and there's a lot of truth to that.
Well,
There's a lot of truth to that. It can be a social thing, and that's really sad. We see in the Western world a epidemic of kids, I think, like we've never seen before, go to college and deconstruct, their faith.
mm-hmm.
It's, if we're honest, it's really nothing new. It's been going on for a long time.
And before we pick the speck out of his eye, I have heard a million times, you guys, I'm sure you have too, when you talk to people like, I love my church. Like, oh, what do you love about it? 9 times out of 10, the worship, it's so awesome. And it's rock and roll worship. It makes them feel good. It puts them in a good mood. It sets them for, and a lot of people, that's definitely within the top 1 or 2 things that's what's going to pick a church for them. So you do have a lot of people going to church, Protestant evangelical churches, because they're looking for friendships, they're looking for spouses, and they like the music. So I really can't judge what he just said. He's being more honest than most of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Vic. Go ahead, Ken.
No, I totally agree with that. I think that's always going to be part of it, because I mean, most of our lives are stuff, school, college, work, and church are still social constructs of where we meet with the people, where otherwise you're kind of on your own. I think that's going to always happen. I mean, that's why, it's just, that's what it is. I think it's really up to you. That's why I tell people all the time that a lot of my faith, where I became strongest was doing my own studying, reading, putting myself into the Bible. And that's things that you do by yourself. And you can do them in a group setting, and I think you should do that. I think that comes into it, but I think it all comes together. I think once you get to that point, then the social aspect of the church tends to flatten out a little bit, and then you're looking at people that have like-minded, who are on the same path as you, and you can have discussions with and have great theological stuff, and and we can rock out a little bit too, right, Vicki?
Absolutely. Yes, we can. And the irony in doing all your own study, Kenny, is the more and more and more you learn in those intimate one-on-one times with the Lord, the more and more you have to find a new church with new friends, because they
I gotta go. Yeah, that's what kind of church. Yeah, we get the big discussions. There's a lot of discussions with that. I'm one of these people, man. I tell people all the time that sometimes people are looking for churches that do not exist. And I'm like, sometimes it's okay to be in a place that's not as theologically sound as you are in terms of stuff, because I go to some places and stuff and see people that are doing some really amazing work in the communities and stuff. And they may not know and be like, they don't know anything about all this fringy stuff and all these things, but they're doing the real actual work of the body of Christ. And I look at that and say, I think there's a need for that too, man. I mean, you can be all this stuff and be like, oh man, Psalm 82 and the Nephilim, and I love that stuff. But I also look at it and say, that is not contingent on who Christ is for me. To me, it
You know-
fleshes it out. It expands and adds to it. But to me, I always tell people that as far as churches, man, you need to find some places where, because you're not going to find perfect people, man. You're going to find people that we're all still searching, man. And it's always got to be, and sometimes that does mean leaving some churches too. That does happen. But
Good point.
I go to a church that I really, really like the teaching of the main pastor. He's really good at verse by verse, teaching. And I've seen him over the years just kind of up there, almost begging people to read the Bible.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
begging them to, in a way, this guy, he spoons feeds them. These guys are involved in ministry and missionary work all over the world and in our town. They're doing incredible things for people that are survivors of human trafficking, people, of just all different walks of life. They have all kinds of outreach, and we're seeing tons of salvation and baptism. There's a lot of fruit, but I feel like the average person, and my wife and I have tried to get connected in groups to this church, and we meet the people, and I hope this doesn't sound arrogant or like I think I'm smarter than anybody, but it's like I feel like some of the people are clueless, and they fit into the category that you kind of mentioned, Vicki, where it's like they're not getting it. It's something's not clicking with them. It's not real for them. So
Yeah.
anyway, let's.
I think,
keep
Tom,
moving
that
here.
honestly, I think
ahead.
there's a lot more people that have that same situation than not. I think that is tough when you get in a
That's
place.
America.
It is America, and I always tell people all the time that they'll ask sometimes on clarity of issues and things, and I'll say, every time I read the Bible, I see something new that I never saw the year before, and it continually does that. I'll see somebody discussing something on Facebook or the internet, and then lo and behold, the passage I'm reading that day in the Bible was specifically on that, and I'm going, I never saw this before, but here it is today on a sermon. I saw some stuff on fasting. I saw some people really going at it about fasting, and I was in Isaiah, and I was reading, and I was like, it basically talks about God's idea of fasting there, and I'd never really paid attention to it before, and it really opened up my eyes. And I'm like, but if I hadn't been doing that studying myself, I'd have never seen it. It went right on past. So yeah.
All right, let's keep it. Let's keep rolling here, and I think we have one more clip, maybe one or two. So let's see what happens next.
Perhaps you think before you say God is gone. Open your eyes, just realize that He is the one. The only one who can save you now from all the sin and hate. Oh, will you hear us all you hear? Yes, I think it's too late.
Okay, so that was pretty straightforward, saying God is the only way. Again, what does he mean? Because we've seen the satanic imagery, okay? We've seen the occultic stuff. Now, according to the biography that I read from Ozzy Osbourne, his view was this. He drank a lot of beer and he did some drugs, did a lot of drugs, and they put out this imagery. They went on tour, and then all these Satanists started showing up at their concerts, and they're like, he was like, what the heck is wrong with you people? This is just a show. This is just, we don't mean any of this stuff. Okay. And they had to have them taken out by security and by the police. That is according to, the biography. And he said it freaked them out because they didn't want to be around anybody like that. And they kind of bit off more than they can chew. Wow. So anyway, I mean, look at those lyrics, guys. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah.
So they really ended on a fatalistic note there. It's
Right.
too late. And so this is another difference between, like, say, King David writing a song lyric. King David will go through all the treachery and the sorrow and the agony and the injustices, and he'll point blank face all of it. He'll call out his enemies and God kill him and smite him. But he always comes to the end, back to reality. He's like, okay, now that I've vented, I know you're in charge. You've always helped me before. You're going to help me again. You're going to lift me up onto a rock. I'm going to be exalted above these enemies. And so it ends with God getting glory and David being redeemed or vindicated. And so, again, we have just a different writing style here where the finger is pointed through the whole thing. You're a hypocrite. You're a hypocrite. You want the Pope on a rope and all this stuff. And then it's like, but it's too late. And then it's like, I expect more to come after this. Like, I expect another verse, like even the hymns, the hymns, like the old hymns, the fourth stanza was like always the hymn where you died and you met the grave or you went to the other side of the shore, and it didn't leave you there. Then it had this one day in glory or once we've been there 10,000 years. And so it brings you beyond the grave. Whereas this kind of just like, now it's too late. You blew it. End of song.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that too when I got to the end of the song, and I was like, well, that's the ending? What happened here? It's like, sorry, it's too late. Wow. Okay, great. I want to write the next line. So Vicki's I'm gonna make a guitar riff, and you can write what the line should be next. The song should finish a little differently. That's just my opinion.
Let's do it.
And so we'll just kick it out. I could probably do that in 2 seconds. We can finish the song right here today.
Guys, I have no clue how many of these episodes we've done. Probably over 20 some. I don't know how many weeks it's been. Let me add it up real quick. I don't know.
Yeah.
4, 5.
Started in September.
Probably close to 30. Anyway,
Yeah.
I can't believe that we're coming to an end of another season. Okay. Next time we pick up, it's going to be Kenny's turn to go first. So get ready, Kenny. You got plenty of time.
Hey, when will that be? Is this today's season, the end?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, and then we're off for a couple weeks, right?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for joining us, Kenny.
And I'm going to show up in Ohio and speak whether anyone wants me to or not.
We want you to. Hey, that's where I was going. Speaking of which, a week from tonight, we will be together in Ohio, down in Brookville, Ohio, at the Harvest Revival Center at the Out of the Darkness Conference. Do you guys know who's going to be there? Yes, there you go. Click on the link, and then it takes you to the conference page. And then when you scroll down, you will see Dr. Gregory Reed, Vicki Joy, Mike Spalding, Colleen James, Sean Carter. What you won't see is Kenny C on this page, but hey, that's okay. We told you he's going to be there. Hey, don't go anywhere, Kenny. You can scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you can it's not too late to register for the conference or to get the streaming. Okay. Somebody asked me if it was going to sell out. Unless we get hundreds of people, it's not going to sell out. We're good. We're doing good. We have, with everybody all together, I don't know. We have a lot of people, well over 100 people that have registered, and I can't keep track because it keeps going up, but, and lots of people that are going to be watching online. So many people that are going to be able just to take advantage of the teaching and the training at the conference. Guys, 1 week from tonight, it's not too late. We can't wait to see so many of you guys. Thank you for the support for Audio Topsy. Thanks to everybody that gets it and likes these shows. If you think that we're out of our mind and we're crazy and we're evil, go ahead and send an email over to throughtheblack.connect@outlook.com. Address it Katie. Yeah. And then if you have anything good to say, go ahead and put that in the comments, guys. We appreciate that. So, if you think that we've fallen from grace because we're talking about Black Sabbath, there's where you can send your email. But guys, don't forget about the conference. We're going to be there. It's going to be here before you know it. I can't believe another season is done. I need to say this. we're taking a little break. We're going to be, just reevaluating stuff and looking at stuff. Pastor Sean's taking some time off. Colleen has got some things that she needs to take care of. And Vicki, you're going to be spending some time writing. Kenny's going to be teaching music. And I'm going to be out on the field.
And writing.
So we're going to be busy, but we're going to be back. I will be checking in. Okay. And you never know when we might check in, we might do a surprise show. I did one just last Sunday. Okay. That show was such a surprise. I didn't even know it was going to happen. Okay. So anyway, we want to keep the communication lines open. Guys, in the meantime, we've got years of archives. We have, even in the last year, we have a ton of archives of shows that you might have missed. And people are always discovering new stuff. I'm seeing comments on stuff from a year ago, 6 months ago, that people are watching and they're like, oh, I didn't know about this or whatever. Or, oh, great show. Oh, you guys are stupid. Whatever, Hey, we'll take anything we can get. Guys, when you share this show in the channel, that's how people find out about it. We want to just be involved in the Great Commission. We want to preach the gospel. We want to edify the church, expose the evil, okay? And we want to see people trained to be able to fight spiritual warfare. As we close out this show, Vicki Joy, Kenny C, any closing comments as we close out this season?
Oh, it's been fun, and I'm looking forward to next season.
Yeah, I've had a great time. I think it's real. Honestly, I probably don't say it enough, but both you guys blessed my life immensely. I'm so glad we all met each other last year and kind of have come together on this. And I enjoy it. I love being on here with you guys. And I'm going to write a riff real quickly for Vicki to write the song for.
Here we go.
There's our Black Sabbath riff for the day.
Okay. Jesus save.
There you go.
Folks, I have no doubts that God worked all of this out and ordained this. And I as well have a blast hanging out with you two and talking about this. So you will hear from us again. When, I don't know. Stay tuned to the website through theblack.com and also this YouTube channel right here. Until next time, God bless, and we'll see many of you guys next week at the conference. All right, bye.
Be there.